and met this gentleman, a professor. This gentleman told him that he knew why we were out. We wanted to get support and sympathy for Nigeria and to explain the federal cause to the international community. And he explained that the international community was not particularly interested in Nigeria as such. All that people were interested in were our resources. And he even went further to say, if we could get robots to exploit your resources for us to develop our economies, we wouldn't mind the whole lot of you being eliminated. But, he said, in the case of Nigeria, there is a difference. And the difference is that Nigerians are very hardworking and very intelligent. And they have got resources, most of which they know next to nothing about. If this country, Nigeria, with all these resources, both human and material, was to have an uninterrupted period of 20 years of peace and stability, it would be another Japan. Because these intelligent, hardworking Nigerians would come to know about their resources, they would use their intelligence and work hard and exploit those resources and develop their economy. A developing economy needs a market, he said. In our own case, you have no problem with the market. Your population is large enough to provide the market that you need. And even without that, the Nigerian market is the entire West African region and beyond. So you will have no problem with the market. Therefore, if you are given an uninterrupted period of 20 years of peace and stability, you would become another Japan, you would threaten our economy, you would be a thorn in our flesh. That was the view of this professor in 1967. And he therefore ended by saying that even after the Civil War, we will not allow you to rest. We will create one problem after another for you. Knowing this, therefore, I feel that in spite of our shortcomings, which I must admit we have, there is a kind of orchestrated campaign against Nigeria so that it may not emerge the economic giant that it is destined to be.
That man was Alhaji Yusuf Maitama Sule, Dan Masani Kano, former Nigerian diplomat, former minister, former representative of this country to the United Nations. He was not a conspiracy theorist. He was not a blogger. He was not a man on the street. He was one of the most distinguished statesmen this country ever produced. And what he just told you, a professor said it to him in 1967 during the Civil War. If we could get robots to exploit your resources, we won't mind if the whole lot of you were eliminated. Quote and end quote. If Nigeria gets 20 years of peace and stability, it will become another Japan. You would threaten our economies. You would be a thorn in our own flesh. So after this civil war, we will not allow you to rest. We will create one problem after another for you. That was 1967, guys. 7 years later, they wrote it down. It becomes a policy in the United States of America. The plan they wrote down, the Kissinger reports, and the doctrine to keep Nigeria poor. Guys, it became a doctrine. Their children yet unborn is going to read that report, read that doctrine, and make use of it. What are Nigerians doing? Part 1, the document. In December 1974, inside the highest corridor of American power, a 250-page classified document was completed. It was called National Security Study, Memorandum 200. But history knows it by another name, the Kissinger Report. Named after Henry Kissinger, who was at the time both National Security Advisor and Secretary of State to the United States of America. This was not a small paper. This document was produced by the collaboration of the CIA, the United States Department of State, the Departments of Defense, the Department of Agriculture. I need you to pay attention to all these departments. The United States Agency for International Development, USAID. This was America's entire national security apparatus, sitting down together, writing a plan. And the title of that plan, Implications of Worldwide Population Growth for U.S. Security and Overseas Interests. They kept it secret for 15 years. It was only declassified in 1989, made public in 1990. And when the world saw what was inside, people were stunned. Because this was not a development plan. This was not a humanitarian document. This was a targeting list. Part 2. Nigeria was on that list. Out of every country on this earth, they identified 13 nations as the most critical targets. Nations whose population growth and resources wealth pose what they called a threat to American security and overseas interests. Let me read you that list. India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, Indonesia, Thailand, the Philippines, Turkey, Egypt, Ethiopia, Mexico, Colombia, Brazil, and Nigeria. The only country in West Africa, the only country named specifically on the African continent by name. Why Nigeria though? Let them tell you in their own words. The Kissinger report said, and I am quoting, that Nigeria was already the most populous country on the continent, and that its growing population suggests a growing political and strategic role for Nigeria, at least in Africa south of the Sahara. Translation: Nigeria is becoming too powerful, and we need to stop that. Part 3, what they were afraid of. Now, let me explain to you exactly what they were worried about. Because when you understand their fear, you will understand everything that has happened to this country since 1970. Fear number 1, your oil. The 1970s was the era when Nigeria's oil wealth was exploding. Nigeria had joined OPEC. The petrodollar system was new, and Nigeria sat on some of the richest crude oil deposits on the planet. The Kissinger report was very clear. America depended on the natural resources of developing countries for its own economy, and it was afraid, deeply afraid, that if those countries became powerful, they would control their own resources. In their words, the smooth flow of material from countries like Nigeria to the United States could be disrupted. Smooth flow of materials. That is what they call your oil, your minerals, your gas, materials, and the flow had to remain smooth into America's hands. Fear number 2, your population. Here is the logic that sounds like madness, but it is written in a government document. They said, if Nigeria's population grows too large, Nigerians will consume more of their own oil and resources at home, which means less of it flows to America. So your people, your children, we are seen as a threat to American resource access. More Nigerians equals more Nigerians who might demand their own resource for themselves. Less oil for America. This is why population control became US foreign policy. Fear number 3, your potential. And this is the one that should make your blood run cold. The professor told Maitama Sule, give Nigeria 20 years of peace, and it becomes another Japan. The Kissinger report said the same thing in different words. A growing, politically powerful Nigeria would develop a growing politically and strategic role in Africa south of the Sahara. They saw what Nigeria could become, and they decided it must not be allowed to happen. Part 4, the plan. How to keep Nigeria weak. So what did they plan to do about it? The Kissinger report laid out a strategy, and I want you to listen to each part because I want you to recognize it, not as history, as your current reality. Stage 1, population control, disguised as humanitarian aid. The report said that the United States should fund family planning programs in target countries, including Nigeria, through organizations that would hide America's role. I will quote directly from the documents. The involvement of multilateral agencies, meaning the UN, the World Bank, would help to conceal, to hide the US role and purpose. They deliberately designed this to look like charity, USAID, UNFPA, World Bank health programs. They sent contraceptives. They funded clinics. They tied their foreign aid to acceptance of family planning program. When Nigeria refused to comply with certain Western reproductive policy, guess what happened? America withdrew the military aid Nigeria needed to fight Boko Haram. Let that sit with you. They withheld the weapons needed to protect Nigerian children because Nigeria would not participate in limiting the number of Nigerian children born. Strategy 2. Keep them politically unstable. The report noted that large youth population in target countries were dangerous because, and I quote, young people can more readily be persuaded to challenge the established order. Translation: young Nigerians who are angry about poverty might rise up and take control of their own resources. The solution? Keep the country in enough chaos that no serious governance or economic development can take roots. The professor told Maita Masule in 1967, "We will create one problem after another." After the Civil War ended in 1970, what did Nigeria get? Military coups in 1966, 1975, 1976, 1983, 1985, 1993. Structural adjustment program that destroyed the Naira. Oye Bonkri and Niger Delta militancy. Boko Haram in the north. Banditry, kidnapping, insecurity. The EFCC and corruption scandals that never ends. One problem after another. Strategy 3. Control the economy through institutions. The Kissinger report recommended using the World Bank and IMF to enforce compliance. Countries that needed loans, and Nigeria has always been made to need loans, would be required to adopt policies that served Western interests. Structural adjustment programs. Privatization of national assets. Currency devaluation. Removal of subsidies. Does any of this sound familiar? Part 5. The mirror. Where are you in this? Now I need to stop because we can spend all day talking about what America did or are doing. But Maita Masule himself said something that this documentary is really about. He said, there is an orchestrated campaign against Nigeria. Yes, he admitted that. But he also said, in spite of our shortcomings, which I must admit we have, it did not excuse Nigeria, and neither will I. Because here is the truth that is harder to hear than anything I have said so far. The Kissinger report cannot succeed without Nigerian help. Think about it. You cannot keep a country poor if that country is united. You cannot keep a country resources flowing out if that country's leaders protect them. You cannot keep a country unstable if its citizens refuse to fight each other. So let me ask you to look in the mirror. The politician who steals the money meant for road, for schools, for hospitals. You are doing their job for them. Every naira stolen from the public is a naira that kept Nigeria weak. The Kissinger report counted on Nigerians' leaders putting themselves before their country. You are fulfilling the prophecy. The citizens who vote for a man because he is from your tribe, your religion, your geopolitical zone, and not because of his capacity to govern, you are doing their job for them. They need you divided. Ethnicity is the tool. You are picking it up and handing it to them. The Nigerian abroad who looks down on Nigeria, who says this country can never work, who moves their wealth out and never invests back, you are doing their job for them. Capital flight from Nigeria feeds the very economies that wrote this document. The young Nigerian who is only angry on social media, but will not vote, will not organize, will not hold the streets. You are doing their job for them. They feared your numbers. They feared your anger becoming organized. So they gave you data and a phone. And you use it to entertain yourself while the country burns. And even those of us who consume foreign media, foreign culture, foreign validation without question, we are doing their job for them. The mind colonized cannot build a free nation. The professor told Maita Masule, they wouldn't even need to eliminate you. They just need to make sure you never rest long enough to build. And we keep disturbing our own rest. Axis. Now here's my verdict. Let me tell you what this document means for today. It was written in 1974. It was adopted as official United States policy in 1975. It has never been formally repealed. The researchers called it the foundational document on US government population control. That continue to represent official United States policy. The method have not changed. They no longer send soldiers. They send NGOs. They no longer write memos about coups. They write loans condition. They no longer say control the population. They say reproductive health. They no longer say protect resources access. They say free trade agreements. But the goal is the same. A smaller Nigeria, a weaker Nigeria, a dependent Nigeria, a Nigeria that exports raw materials, cheap and import finished goods expensive, a Nigeria whose best mind live for their countries, a Nigeria whose leaders are so busy stealing that they never think strategically, a Nigeria that is always almost great but never gets there. That is the plan. And the plan is working. You watch this video. That means something. Because they also counted on you not knowing. The professor spoke in 1967. Maita Masole repeated it for decades. The document was declassified in 1989. It is in the US National Archives. It is public record. And most Nigerians have never heard of it. That is not an accident. So now that you know, what is your position in this? Not what will the government do. Not what will America do. What will you do? Will you continue to be the instrument of your own undoing? Will you fight your brother over tribe? Why they take the oil? Will you vote for the thief because he speaks your language? Will you scatter your energy on outrage that leads to nowhere? Or will you wake up? Because the professor was right about one thing. He said Nigeria has resources, most of which they know next to nothing about. He was talking about oil and minerals. But I am talking about something deeper. He said Nigerians are intelligent and hardworking. Those are your resources. And nobody, no report, no doctrine, no classified memo can take those from you without your permission. The 20 years of peace and stability the professor feared, it begins with you and me. My name is Inye. Know the truth and speak it anyway. Now share this video and digest this information. We must send religion and tribalism out of our land if we want a better life for ourselves and for our children. A thief is a thief, whether it's Igbo, whether it's Yoruba, whether it's Hausa, whether it's Edo, whether it's Igbo. We should all gather and beat a thief. We should not first ask, where is he from? It is for our collective good.